Yes, I'm back. My apology. Oh my God, that was terrible. I don't really know what I did. I must have hit something. I kind of know the area where it went wrong in. That shouldn't happen again. Anyway, um, see if people give me a second chance here. So this is the last presentation during Pride Month. And I talked about the book with many fingerprints. That's the Bible. I mean, if the Bible was perfect and it didn't have any humans involved in its creation, I'm sure that we'd never have any doubt about what it's trying to tell us. But since humans were involved and humans are trying to understand it, we have plenty of disagreements. But as I'm trying to say, the majority opinion of scripture scholars around the world, major universities and theologians and scripture biblical schools and seminaries, they're all pretty much coming together on this. That what I call the clobber verses against gay people are finally being alleviated, and that we're really getting things clarified in the original languages. That's what scholarship does. The Koine Greek of the New Testament, the ancient biblical Hebrew. That's they're actually trying to understand it. So, but I wanted to put fingerprints up here, and you can see some fingerprints. Hopefully, Open Hand will be back with his fingerprint. I know who that is. But even though God is perfect, human beings are not perfect, and so we don't always get things right. In the past, polygamy, we don't believe in that anymore, but that was acceptable in the Old Testament. Slavery was as well, and we don't accept slavery, do we? Even misogyny. Men having such a, overpowering and in many ways oppressive relationship toward women. We don't accept that. And violence in general, I mentioned that. So anyway, that's just kind of making this a quick summary. I could show you all kinds of conflicts that are in the Bible. Things in the Old Testament don't agree at all with the New Testament. So anyway, I'm just my point in all of this is to say, if you have heard certain ways of interpreting the Bible from maybe your minister, your pastor, or whoever it may have been, your priest or rabbi, keep your mind open for something new, because we are constantly learning new things. The mind is like a parachute. The mind has to be kept open. And there were changes. I was trying to mention in 1939, at Yale University in this country, obviously, in 1939, the Revised Standard Version Committee met, and they decided to put the word homosexual into two places in 1 Corinthians, and as well as, I'm trying to remember, 1 Thessalonians possibly. And it didn't belong there. It was the wrong insertion because they removed it a few years later. Sadly, the word homosexual, we didn't even know what it was until it was invented in 1868 in Austria by a German. So they didn't have a notion of homosexual as a group or basically a type of person. They did understand behavior. And so any condemnation you find in the entire Bible, 73 books in the Bible. In the Protestant Bible, there's 66. There's a difference of 7 because of the deuterocanonical, or what they call the Apocrypha. But anyway, no matter where you look in the Bible, you're going to find behavior is condemned, not a group or classification of people. And that's why they mistakenly put the word homosexual in, because that's a classification of people, and then they removed it a little bit a few years later. So anyway, I'm going to launch right in. Welcome to those of you who are returning. I do apologize for that mistake. There's about 7 songs playing at the same time. God only knows why, because I do not know. I'm not going to go ahead and play the I Am White 2 song again. As beautiful as it is, it looks like it may have some copyright restrictions on it. So let's go ahead and I'll line up the video. And I worked on this for hours, so I hope that you like it. Beginning with the ancient scribes, who did their very best to translate and copy the sacred text. But the ancient scribes made a lot of mistakes. They were called textual variants. One common mistake is called, that is a big long word, but it's very simple, parapolesis occasioned by homotelioton. How about that? Say that 5 times real fast. What the scribe did, the mistake the scribe made, was he let his eye wander, or maybe he was tired, and he skipped the whole line, or maybe he repeated words. That happens all the time. When you do your homework, you probably have done that yourself. Paraplegia occasioned by homeotelioton. That's what that was. It's a textual variant, is what they call it. A slight error. And it wasn't uncommon at all. There are human fingerprints, speaking of, all over the Bible. The Bible insertion in the Revised Standard Version, which I'm talking about, we'll be talking about more, in 1946, was a serious error. It affected a lot of people. But it was corrected years later, but a great deal of damage was already done because it vilified a certain class of people, gay people, homosexual people, as you will soon see. So here are the New Testament texts that we're talking about that were in error. These two are very important. First being Paul's first letter to the people in Corinth, or the Corinthians, chapter 6, verse 9. Written by Paul about 25 years after Jesus died and rose from the dead. And it reads like this, as you can see in the original 1610 version of King James Bible. Is exactly how it reads. That's where I took it from. Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God? Question mark. Do you know that? Be not deceived. Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind. And it goes on. Nor thieves, covetous, those are covet things, the drunkards, revilers, extortionists, none of them are going to inherit the kingdom of God. Let's continue, because these two passages, both from St. Paul, one to the people of the city of Corinth, and this one to his traveling companion, Timothy. Timothy also traveled in that same region in 64 of the Common Era. And in the King James Bible reads, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless. How about that? And the disobedient, the ungodly, and sinners, the unholy, the profane, for murderers. That's what the law is written for, so they understand what they're doing wrong. The murderers of fathers, the murderers of mothers, manslayers, whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, men stealers, liars, those who perjure other people, and if there any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. And I've highlighted there in yellow, defile themselves with mankind. Because like the other one before it, I'll go back to, I held it, nor the effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind. And we're going to have to try to understand what they mean by effeminate, because it's not what you and I would think right off the bat. It's not that at all. So what we looked at was the English translation of the King James Bible in its original version in 1611. There's no mention of the word homosexual. Those that defile themselves with mankind, and I'll go back, nor the effeminate or abusers of themselves with mankind. There's nothing about homosexuality. That was added in 1946. We'll go through all of it. All right, the German Bible, let's take a look at that. Martin Luther's original German translation in 1534 looks like this. And you see it's in German. The finger is pointing at a word in German, translated from the original Koine Greek, and this is in 1534. Nabenschonder, the German word Nabenschonder. And in both passages that we just looked at, 1 Corinthians and 1 Timothy, it describes, it's coming from the word Naben for boy, and Schonder for molester. That's right. Nabenschonder, boy molester. They translated the Koine Greek word arsenic kotai, as the original Greek word. Instead of homosexual, they translated it way back then as boy molester, will not inherit the kingdom of God. Okay? In fact, if you look here with me, the word homosexual didn't even appear in any German translation of the Bible until 1983. This is coming out of the 1946 Revised Standard Version I've been telling you about, Yale University. The word homosexuality didn't even show up in any translations of the Bible until 1946. And there wasn't even, you know why? There wasn't even a word in Hebrew for it, for homosexual. They weren't even aware of the concept. or the class of people who were homosexual they wouldn't have known. But in the Greek-speaking world, they would have, but not among the Jews. And we're talking about Jewish literature. The Bible is Jewish literature, so it addresses a whole class of people, homosexuals, that wouldn't even make sense to them, okay? The Bible is clearly addressing behavior, as I have up here. So the mistranslation of the Greek words in Koine Greek, malakoi, defined as someone effeminate, let me bring that up here, is actually referring to someone who lives a lazy life, soft, decadent, indolent, a type of lifestyle, caring only for themselves. And arsenikoitai, another Koine Greek word, obviously they're all Greek, a compound word, that's two words together. It translates a male bed. So someone who's kind of soft and living a life of luxury, and their male bed, malakoi and arsenikoitai. Scholars believe what it means is it alludes to abusive, depraved, predatory behavior of pederasty. Now, just to make it very simple, what we're talking about is a man having sex with a boy age 12 or up. All right, we're going to take a deep dive into that topic. There are other translations, and I'll show you, that are very ancient. There's no mention of the word homosexual. Here you can see these are the two main areas, 1 Corinthians and 1 Timothy, where malakoi and arsenikoitai are mentioned. That's the original language the Bible was written in, but translated not using the word homosexual at all, but rather a soft individual and someone who would be taking advantage of a boy. Okay? Here's some old translations. This first one you're about to see, I mentioned it, was in 1674, Swedish translation. And then another one in 1830 from Norway. And they both use the same terms, boy abuser or boy molester, right? And even in the earliest complete Bible that we have that is still in existence, it was known as the Codex Sinaiticus, there's one in Rome, and also another one called the, think of it here, it's in London, but in both passages, I'll show you here, bring it up. Yeah, the Codex Sinaiticus. And why is it called that? Sinai, right? What happened at Sinai? Moses, the Ten Commandments. And it says here, now this is how it reads back in the 4th century, word for word. This is translated from Koine Greek into English. All right, so you can read it with me if you want to. Oh, know you not that the unrighteous shall not inherit God's kingdom. Be not deceived, neither will lewd persons, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor catamites. Now, I got that in yellow, and I want to go back to what that actually is. Or nor sodomites. What we should know what that is. People living in the city of Sodom. And those people were not guilty of homosexuality. They were guilty of violence. And I'll get into that a little bit more later. Nor thieves, or those who covet, those who are drunk, those revilers or extortioners. None of them shall inherit the kingdom of God. Now, it's really important that you know that in ancient Greek and Rome, a catamite is a pubescent boy, age 12 and up, roughly. And he was the intimate companion of an older male, usually in what we would call today a pederastic relationship. Some might call it pedophile. But an older pedophile relationship is usually known as pederasty. And we're going to investigate that in more depth here in a moment. I want to next go to, this is really a third and final New Testament passage that's kind of dicey when it comes to clobbering over the head of homosexuals, something. And it says here, and again, this is in the original language in King James, the first version, 1611. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, even their women did exchange the natural use, that which is against nature, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the women, and burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving into themselves that recompense of their error, which was meat. I know it's the old King's English and doesn't read quite the same as as ours. That's why they came out with the New King James Version. But I wanted to give you the original. This is a 17th century, 1611 version. Nothing mentioned about homosexuality. We're going to have to unpack the part where it says men with men, women with women, right? I'll just, as close as I could put it in our language, our English, not the King's English. For this reason, God gave them up to degrading passions. The women exchanged natural intercourse for unnatural. And in the same way, also, men gave up natural intercourse with women, were consumed with passion for each other. Men committed shameless acts with men and received in their own person the due penalty for their error. Now, first of all, these are the words of St. Paul. St. Paul was a Jew. St. Paul cannot condemn what he doesn't know. We can only condemn what we know about, right? That's just reason. That's common sense. If Paul's not aware of healthy, loving, adult, same-sex adult relationships, then he's not going to be able to talk about them. But he is aware of something else. And that's where we get to the heart of how these three passages are to be interpreted, right? I'll bring up a slide to help us with that. St. Paul would be aware of these three things that you're looking at. Three same-sex practices found in the Greco-Roman pagan culture that he evangelized. Remember, Paul left Tarsus. Paul was himself converted to Christ, and then he traveled essentially west through what was known as Asia Minor into what we call today Turkey, modern-day Turkey, and then further to Greece and Rome. That would be the direction Paul and his traveling companion Timothy and others went, and into this Greco-Roman culture. So Paul is condemning something where he was at. He wrote to the Corinthians, something was going on in Corinth, right? He wrote to Timothy, and in Rome itself, his letter to the Romans. Pederasty was an older man spending time with a prepubescent boy. That's the first one listed. Prostitution. Paul's condemning where a male sells himself to be the passive recipient in a same-sex act. And thirdly, slave prostitution. And that would be where a slave owner rents out his slaves for sexual acts, okay? There's no evidence that Paul was aware of any committed, consensual, same-sex, loving adult relationships in his day, in Israel. So as I say, you do not condemn what you don't know. Why would you? How could you? If you don't know something, you can't condemn it. But he did know about these three things. We can correctly interpret Paul's words to the city of Corinth, the city of Rome, and to his traveling companion Timothy by understanding the culture and context and society, and that's what we're about to do. You know, I mentioned earlier about the catamites, right? Being condemned, referring to a man-boy relationship in the Greco-Roman society. It's known as pederasty. Back in Paul's letter to the people in the city of Corinth, Corinth was like the Las Vegas of the Middle East, the most prosperous city in all of Greece. It was an important trading center. It ranked up there with Ephesus and Antioch. Commerce flowed in every direction, and there were abundant signs of wealth. However, not everyone shared in that wealth. There was a great gulf between rich and poor, just like today. And when you have a gulf between rich and poor, you have a problem. And one could fairly point out that Corinth was, as I say, the decadent city. All the decadence in Corinth you could ever imagine. So let's talk about specifically what that was like. In ancient Athens, Greece, and in Corinth, the Roman system existed, and it was known as pederasty. And it was right out there in plain view. An older man would introduce a younger boy into Roman society, is what they did, especially among the wealthy, the aristocracy. And the age of the youth depicted was estimated anywhere between 12 and 18. A number of, in Athens, Athenian laws addressed the pederastic relationship, and we know the pederasty system in place at the time of Paul, when he wrote his epistles, like to the city of Corinth. That was what was going on. He knew it, he saw it, and he condemned it. Now, the older man, bring up a little more information here. In Greek, I mentioned that word, arsenikotai. The first part of that double word, arseni, means an older man who is penetrating the younger boy, malakoi, the one soft or effeminate, the one who hadn't had his beard growth, the one who's still going through puberty, the one who hasn't come of age, who's still a child. And in the Greco-Roman system, it actually permitted an older man to penetrate a younger boy, and it could be even a girl as well, or slave, prostitute. And pederasty promised some of these younger boys they would have advantages if they did that. For example, in ancient Sparta, we think of the military. Many of the older men mentored the young boys of that age, helping them to eventually, in time, further themselves in Spartan life. It was kind of like a coming of age in exchange for sexual favors. The Roman imperial society permitted men to indoctrinate boys into the Greco-Roman society, which would begin about age 12, and it would go on, as it says there, until manhood. Now, if that sounds outrageous, then consider this. Age of sexual consent in ancient Rome, as I just mentioned, age 12 for girls, 14 for boys. In the United States in 1880, I hope you're sitting down, 37 of our states in 1880 had the age of sexual consent at 10 years of age. 10 states had it at the age of 12, and Delaware, for some reason, age 7. Well, that's kind of a snapshot of the Greco-Roman world. When St. Paul traveled to the temple in Corinth known as Aphrodite, the temple of Aphrodite, in that temple there was over 1,000 prostitutes. And they were there for a specific purpose. It was an accepted part of Greco-Roman society, not for the Jews, not for St. Paul, but in the Greco-Roman world, the citizens of Rome. A very simple, quick review. Same-sex relations that are condemned only involved violence, sexual violence, chapter 19 of Genesis, and idolatry in Leviticus 18, and pederasty and prostitution in Romans 1, 1 Corinthians, and 1 Timothy. There's no condemnation of healthy, loving, committed sexual, same-sex couple, but only of those who abuse. Okay, that is, let me bring myself up here. I should have said a little warning about some of this because I know it's a trigger for a number of people who have, or perhaps know someone who has experienced sexual abuse. So my apologies for not, I think that being adults, we're able to understand this historically. In fact, this went on for 1,500 years in especially the Greco world. Athens was the first major Greek city, if I recall correctly, that discontinued what they called the pederastic relationship, young boys and older men. There even was some relationships with older women and younger girls. That also went on. Mostly it was the boys with the men. Some were Spartan soldiers in a very military environment like Sparta. They would train these young boys to become men, starting roughly around age 12, preparing them perhaps for life in the military or commercial, some other advantage they might gain by getting to know this older man. But there was, of course, the exchange of sexual favors. So that, we can hate that today, and we do. St. Paul saw it, and he condemned it. But nonetheless, as bad as it sounds, that was going on in ancient society. That was, in fact, exactly what was going on in ancient Greco-Roman society, more in Greece than in Rome. So, at any rate, we can talk about any of this if you're interested. The main point I'm trying to introduce is that St. Paul was condemning what he saw. And the things that he saw, as I had up there, included pederasty and temple prostitution, a lot of the sexual violence that was taking place, manipulating people who had money, who could manipulate those who didn't have money. And that we could see where the exchange of things were uneven, that the older person had more power, certainly had more money, more influence. And so it was an uneven relationship. And we would look at that today as why we condemn any relationship, really, where someone's being manipulated. It might be the elderly today, it might be a young person, but a disabled person, whoever it might be, we would certainly see that and condemn that. Well, that's what St. Paul was doing as well. But we should be careful to think that this is talking about adult, same-sex, very equal relationships between consenting adults who desire a loving, committed relationship. It wasn't condemning that at all. So anyway, this is what the majority opinion of Scripture scholars are trying to tell us. I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, so Paul did all this traveling, and he was certainly aware of the problems, because he was a Roman citizen. He had free access to travel through the entire Roman Empire, which he did. And he brought the good news of Jesus, but he didn't bring a condemnation of people who are loving to each other, either opposite or same sex. He brought a condemnation of oppression, whether it was toward the poor, the widow, the orphan, the alien, the refugee, whoever, and also to those who are being sexually abused, as was happening in many of these cases as well. So anybody have any questions about that? Also, if anybody wants to come up on panel, certainly welcome to do that. Maybe I could just kind of try to summarize, because the first translation that actually included the word homosexual or homosexuality wasn't until 1946. 1946 was the first time in anyone's Bible the word homosexual, referring to a group of people, a class of people, homosexual people, was ever put in 1946. For 2,000 years in the time of Christ, it was, and before, the word homosexual was never, ever part of the Bible. So in 1946 at Yale University, the scholars thought it was correct to do that, and later, some years later, they removed it, realizing they had made a terrible error. Unfortunately, there were other Bible translations that went off of the Revised Standard Version, which this one was, and they kept the word in. And unfortunately, that was a very poor translation. As I say, the Arsena and that translation of homosexual is bad. It's not a good translation. It's homophobic. This condemnation has to do with the uneven relationship between an adult man and a younger boy. That's primarily, or through prostitution. Also, when you think of slavery, some people took advantage of their slaves with sexual favor as well. So all of that Paul was condemning. It's all he saw. He couldn't condemn something he didn't even see. Since that first translation didn't come to 1946, and the Lutheran Bible uses the word Nabenschänder, which means a boy molester. It's pretty clear that Paul is really warning them about the sin of. And the Germans didn't add the word homosexual to the Bible until 1983, which was unfortunate as well, because it was, again, the wrong translation. It was incorrect. And the Revised Standard Version Committee at Yale reversed themselves. And so the Bible does speak of child abuse. Men have abused children, male and female, since the beginning of time. This is really a condemnation. And as I said, if you watch the previous two live streams I did, parts 1 and 2, this is part 3, they talk about what happened, especially in ancient Jewish society, where the domestic abuse going on was the male patriarch of the family, who really had a great deal of power and misused it and took advantage of. That's why Genesis, look up Leviticus chapter 18 and read verse 20, or read the entire chapter 18 or the entire chapter 20, and you will see what I'm talking about. Because in those two chapters, 18 and 20, it's like a read of what's going on and what's going bad and what's to watch out for and what's to condemn morally. in the behavior, potentially bad behavior, in a first century Israelite household. And they're saying don't sleep with your mother-in-law, don't sleep with your children, your daughter, don't sleep with your daughter's husband, don't sleep with your younger boy's new wife, don't sleep with their children, don't sleep with animals, don't sleep with animals, and don't sleep with boys. And of course that's where it was the mistake was made to suggest that this is two male consenting individuals, which clearly it would make no sense. So anyway, the Jewish people especially had an understanding that relationships were about procreation, and they wouldn't have understood anything but a relationship between male and female. So that is just something to consider. If you want the full meal deal, go back and watch all three videos, the first two, and then this one concludes with the New Testament background. But we have condemned LGBTQ people for generations, and that should never have happened. Should never have happened. We want to straighten the record out. So that's what, and this isn't my scholarship. I'm just giving you what I have learned in my studies in seminary and my theology that I've taken. But this is what I always say, the majority opinion of scripture scholarship is talking about today. You will find exceptions. Dahlia, sleep with your husband. Or just, you didn't have to retract that. That's perfectly fine. But for those who were doing those things, I think that the author of Leviticus as well as Genesis, and the author of St. Paul being the author in the New Testament, where these vices and immoral behavior is taking place, he wanted to name them very clearly and point them out. In spite of that, we still have gotten things wrong at times. I imagine at Yale University, you get together the elite of biblical scholarship, and they screw up. And they did screw up, and they corrected their error, but the damage was done. So if anybody has any questions for me about any of this, I'm happy to talk about that. And what they did when they corrected their error, and the error they made in 1946 in the Revised Standard Version of the Bible, which was a major translation many of the others used, and they put the word homosexual in. Well, they removed the word homosexual and they put the word pervert in place of it. Imagine that kind of I don't know if that word correlates, but that's the word they chose to use, a sexual pervert. But they took the word homosexual out. Meaning, if you're a straight man and you abuse children, I just saw in the news recently a Republican, state house Republican, I can't remember what state it was, is now in jail for having sexual abuse with children. And that could be male, it could be female. But largely, that's perversion. That's perversion. Okay? Yeah. So it covers, I suppose the word pervert or perversion covers a wide swath of moral impropriety. So there it is. Beginning with that mistranslation, if that hadn't happened in 1946, we probably wouldn't have nearly the homophobic, the homophobia that we have today. It's sad. We have to realize, too, when that was going on, there was a great deal of fear. The psychology community believed that homosexuality was an aberration, that there was a dysfunction going on mentally in the gay person. And if you remember back, when I was a kid in the 50s and the 60s, they did radio and TV commercials about beware of your public bathrooms, be careful at public parks. Gay people, perverts could be lingering, and they could grab you. And that's where that homophobic fear ran, kind of like in the 1950s when the Red Scare with Senator McCarthy, and he was seeing a communist. Under every rock, he would find a communist, and we knew later we learned how wrong he was. But to have that type of paranoia. And then, of course, in 1973, you could say the landmark for defining psychological conditions. Homosexuality was removed as a dysfunction, It was no longer included as a dysfunction. Because, as I said before, human beings are, over the course of time, and certainly in science, the sciences of the mind, psychology, and theology, the science of faith and study of God, all of that, we continue to grow and learn in our understanding. So modern psychology, the DSM-5, it will not list homosexuality as a pathology. It is not a pathology, even though there were times in the past people thought it was. And the same thing, they thought this should have been included, use the word homosexuality. It was removed. Human beings, the fingerprints I talked about earlier, we humans are not perfect and we make mistakes. And we have to be adult enough, big enough, mature enough to take responsibility for correcting our errors. So it's going to take a few generations to probably get this to sink in, to especially a portion of our society is very homophobic. And that is certainly, we see that going on today. So you do remember those commercials? Yeah. So a mistranslation, imagine. So when people say the Bible contains no errors, you know, if you read the 7th chapter of John's Gospel, the 7th chapter talks about the woman caught in adultery. It might come as a big surprise, but that story wasn't in the original. That is not even a story biblical scholars will tell you. Jesus never told that story, and he's in the story, as if he told the story. Things are not always, we don't always get things right. That was a very popular story back in the 2nd and 3rd century, and it was included later in the 4th century versions. But you won't find it in the Codex Sinaiticus or the Codex Vaticanus or Ephraimic Codex, others that are out there, because it wasn't part of the Bible, and it was added much later on. So, it goes to show that human beings are as much involved in what we have, the finished product called the Bible, as God is. God trusts human beings so much that he said to us, speak for me. And the prophetic tradition tried to do that. Amos, Hosea, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, I said. So many of the prophets tried to speak for God. But remember, they're always human beings with human fingerprints, and they're not God, therefore they're not perfect. Therefore the Bible is not inerrant. It is inspired. The Bible is inspired by God, but the human fingerprints prove that they get things wrong sometimes, just like the Yale University experience with the Revised Standard Version of the Bible scholars got things wrong. And as I say, 500,000 textual variants, that's a lot of mistakes, but generally, most of them are made in the early translations on the first few centuries. That's where most of them, and they weren't major errors. I wouldn't say for the most part they really took away from the significance or the truth. People don't realize this, but the Bible, which is an ancient first century Jewish literature and older, going back before the first century, they don't think like us. They don't write like us. They don't convey the truth like us. They're not trying to make us look at all the fine details. I often use the example of George Washington. He cut down the cherry tree. I bet his mother was pretty mad. Well, we Americans and Westerners, we want to know the whole story. How big was the cherry tree? What season was it growing in before he cut it down? Was it bearing a lot of fruit every year? What trouble did he get in from his mom? What age was George at when he cut down the cherry tree? All Jewish people don't care about that. You know what they care about? They care about one thing. They care about you getting the point. Don't miss the point, right? Don't get confused. Look for the seed of truth, and don't get confused by the husk of fiction. The husk is all the other details. Jesus told the story about a prodigal son, and there could have been hundreds and thousands of prodigal sons. But he was saying, let me tell you about a typical one. A man had 2 sons. The youngest son wanted his inheritance early and shamed the family, went off and lived a life of debauchery. And they all knew that story. They didn't say to him, well, who are we talking about? Who did this? Because a lot of people did that. They left home early. Jesus is saying, don't miss the point. So the point here that we're talking about is don't miss the reality that Scripture is trying to tell us that God is not mistaking love for vice. Love between adults, whether it's between men, women, loving one another, is what we're called to do. Not to misuse that, manipulate others, control others, abuse others, be violent toward others. That's what is being condemned. And Paul saw that in the pederastic society in which he traveled. Okay, so anyway. We looked at the New Testament today, 1 Corinthians, that's Paul's letter to the Corinthians, who lived in Corinth, the big city, and to Timothy, his traveling companion. So those are the two. The other had to do with the first chapter of Romans. And if you read that, oh boy, what a wake-up call. Read chapter 1, you feel like, put your hands on your hips and think how wonderful I am and how bad these other people are. And then you keep reading the end. Second half of chapter 1 in the book of Romans, Paul wrote to the Romans. And then you read chapter 2, and suddenly you got egg all over your face because he is condemning, it looks like, almost everyone. The important thing is don't be arrogant. Don't be judgmental. Don't cast aspersions on other people. Take a look at yourself. Really, that's the point Paul was trying to make. We all fall short of the glory of God. Don't be so arrogant. Find some humility somewhere inside you to realize that you're not finished either. You're not perfect. And God is going to judge you harshly, especially if you are judging other people. There's a lot of work we need to do on ourselves. So I think in a topic like this, where you're dealing with LGBTQ and Pride Month, people in that community are just trying to survive. They don't want to get hung up on barbed wire like that dear young man who died a violent death in Wyoming. You know who I'm talking about. What we want to do is remove ignorance, raise consciousness, help people through education, arrive at the best now present insights of academia so that we are not ignorant. Ignorance is a dangerous thing. When we're ignorant, we don't know. And what we don't know, we usually become fearful of. And you know what we do when we're afraid? A lot of fear is what leads us into war. We're afraid Iran is going to create a bomb. So out of our fear, let's go bomb them. Fear does that, and fear comes from ignorance. So we have to remove ignorance first, and hopefully the fear will follow. And then we won't be violent toward LGBTQ people. It's very, very important. Okay, does anybody want to type in the side chat? You want a link come up on panel? You're absolutely more than welcome to do that if that's what you'd like. There's a lot more I could talk about. I could just talk about Scripture all day because it's my field of study and theology. In Corinth, there was a temple of Aphrodite, who is the goddess of love, sexuality, and fertility. And people went in there. It was a clearinghouse. You had to pay for your pleasure, and there was a lot of very young. Some say possibly 1,000 prostitutes, but not all female ones. It's a bit of an exaggeration. I think scholarship would say today it wasn't that many, but there were many. And Corinth was a seaport town. When you have sailors, you have all kinds of moral activity, do you not? So let's see. At any rate, that's. But prostitution in these ancient cities was legal. It was widespread. It was in Greek and Roman cities. And Corinth would have had every form of, they call it porneia in the Greek. It's lower class prostitutes, often slaves that were used for the pleasure of wealthy people. There were others, educated people who, as I mentioned in the pederastic society, wealthy people who would pay for their pleasures with young people. And then there were independent sex workers in taverns, inns, and temples, and other places, right? But sex work in Corinth, I would say, the city where Paul visited several times in first letter to the Corinthians, it might have been more visible there due to the port traffic. It was a place where the meeting road of a lot of commerce, sales, people traveling. And also it had a religious reputation as well, as it needed to have. So all of that was going on. There's so much more. Matthew Shepard, yeah. Yeah, how tragic. And if only there were so few, but there are so many that have suffered violence out of ignorance, ignorant people. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. I didn't talk a lot about the Greek, the Koine Greek, but in Romans they use a word, the Koine Greek word, phism and paraphism. Or it's actually physiken and paraphism. And they have to do with what's natural and unnatural, but it's really misunderstood because it had really more to do with things that are uncharacteristic for a person, like do the natural thing. Well, would it be natural for a gay person to try to be heterosexual? No. It'd be as unnatural it would be for me to try to be gay. I'm a straight man, and I'm straight. I can't change that. It's who I am. I don't want to change that. A gay person, I'm sure, feels the same way. That's their natural state. So that's being talked about in chapter 1 of Romans, verse 26. Anyway, there's a lot more to say. You having phone issues? I'm sorry. Well, I'm glad, Angela. There's an awful lot here to chew on and to talk about. The only ones who would disagree with me would be generally the fundamentalist schools around Moody Bible Institute. Let me think of a few. Basically, if you've ever watched the electronic church, that's what I call it, the electronic church on television, you generally find, Jerry Falwell schools and places like that. They will interpret the Bible almost literally, and unfortunately, with a certain type of leverage for their personal biases. If they believe that something different from themselves, and if they claim to be straight, and yet so many of them have, I have sinned, and the tears pour down their cheeks, and they've done things. Yet, they are very oppressive to people different from themselves. So if they claim heterosexuality, they condemn homosexuality, that sort of thing. It's sad because they lack theological training and they lack biblical scholarship. And I would encourage all of them to go back and get at a minimum an MDiv, which is the gold standard for people who are pastors. And MDiv is a Master of Divinity. That's generally what almost every church requires for people who are going to be ordained or are going to be serving in a senior role in parish ministry, church ministry, a Master of Divinity. And if you did that today, you would arrive at the many things I'm sharing today. That's what is being taught, with the exception of some of these very, very traditional, oftentimes referred to as fundamentalist schools, that more often than not take the Bible literally and sadly misunderstand what they're reading. That's why the ancient languages is essential to trying to get at the actual meaning. It isn't important what I think, it's important what St. Paul meant. What did St. Paul try to tell us? And what's important is not what I'm saying, is what are the author of Leviticus, what are they trying to tell us in chapter 18 and 20, and then in the story of Genesis as well. That's what's important, and that's what biblical studies will bring. Angela says, are you familiar with Wycliffe Bible Translators? Yes. Their campus, airfield, museum. Yeah. It would be, I would say, good, a little more of the traditional bent. But again, it's part of the whole history of Bible studies, and the Wycliffe area would be a significant part that we carry with us in our history. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to do it now, but I think what I should try to do is maybe put out what I would consider the recommended Bible resources that people could turn to, that you might find helpful. What would be the most preferred Bible translation? It wouldn't be the King James. I know that, but I could give you that, and perhaps if you hold the Bible in one hand, you should hold a Bible commentary in the other hand. as I say, because it's 2 and 3,000 year old ancient Middle Eastern literature, and we're not that old. We didn't live during that time, and we're not, most of us have that sort of background. So we need the commentaries, good commentaries, to help us understand the ancient context from which we read. Oh, you deliver their mail. Okay. Wow. Yeah, I don't poo-poo anyone who reads scripture, even the most fundamentalist. I think that, it's important. St. Augustine heard an angel when he was, St. Augustine was a real playboy in the 4th century, but he heard an angel's voice. They spoke Latin back then, and the angel's voice was tolle lege in Latin. I mean, pick up the book. And he did. He picked it up, and he read St. Paul, and he read about how fornicators and evil people, like we just read, will not inherit the kingdom of God. It changed his life completely. So whether you have the best Bible available, just pick it up and read it. I think it's very, very important that people do that. But I will leave what I would think are, at least from Bible scholars, what their recommended Bible versions and commentaries and resources that you might look to. I will put that in below the title of this stream when it's over with. I'll put that in there. And maybe links to where you can find them. So anyway, I guess nobody wants to come up on panel. That's fine. I'm going to be doing a video on July 1st, another live stream, which is just a couple days away, having to do with bullying. And the reason I want to do it on July 1st is because it's Canada Day. July 1st is Canada Day, which is the equivalent of the 4th of July for us, which is our celebration of independence. So Canada Day is on Tuesday, July 1st, and there's a reason why. There's something else I want to share. But that'll be the day that just 2 days from now, I'm going to be doing a live stream on bullying. And I'm very much concerned about what's going on. Things are not getting better. Things are getting worse. And I think we need to address it. I think we need to name it. I'm not talking about people. I'm just talking that we need to address what's gone wrong. If there's a line, we've crossed it many times. If there's any moral ascendancy left, I'm not sure where it is. But we need to revisit and try to recover from what's going on right now. It's really vile. And I don't approve. I don't know if you do either. Bottom line for me is, and that fits well with today, because we shouldn't bully, we shouldn't oppress, we shouldn't go after people, we shouldn't try to hurt people. And yet that's what's going on all the time. Even the people defending themselves have to have a measure of respectability. Don't do back to someone what you hate they're doing to you, right? And yet, sadly, I hear people saying, an eye for an eye, and I'll do it 10 times worse. Well, it's pretty hard to stand on any kind of respectability if that's going to be someone's approach. We're going to have to try to maintain some sort of, humanity in all of this. If you want to look at the differences between the Old and New Testament, the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and then Jesus says, I tell you differently. Peter, put your sword away. If you live by the sword, you'll die by that sword. Love your enemies, do good to those that hate you, bless those that curse you, and on and on and on. Very, very important that we try to understand what Jesus was getting at, because he was nonviolent. And it just seems that nonviolence has a much better outcome than trying to be violent. Yeah, no, you completely misunderstood me. Phoenix, I'm saying that we're going to do a live stream addressing violence. Okay? Yeah, I don't know if you're a troll. I'll give you one more opportunity. But, if you came in and you're just playing games, you'll be out here on your ear real quick. And that's not bullying. That's addressing people that are disrupting, people who are actually bullying with words. Your word, As you can bully with your word that comes out of your mouth or you type on side chat, you can bully with your fist by hurting someone physically, and you can bully with plans of evil if people come in here trying to hurt people. So, yeah, and if I do or anybody else does, we have to call it out. So maybe, Phoenix, keep your mind open and stop being judgmental and realize that you're going to be called out for when you come in and make a comment. Nobody in here is participating, as you said, in bullying. We're in fact going to call that out, okay? So let's get that straight at least, please. Hey, Pebbles, welcome to you. Good to see you. So anyway, if anybody else also, I might add, July 1st is not very far off. If you have something you want me to include, some concept, some idea, then please do that. I have a public email. If you go to the About page on my Stellar 911 channel, you can email me your thoughts, your suggestions, anything you want me to include. Because I am doing a bullying live stream addressing bullying as a big, big, major problem going on. Has gone on for a long time, but still going on and getting worse. I think a lot of people would agree with me. Okay? Okay, thank you, Phoenix. Now that makes sense. If you had said that from the get-go, that would have been great. Yeah, hi to you, Pebbles. Good to see you. Anybody else, just keep that in mind, because that's just 48 hours off. I'm going to be doing that live stream. And if you want to come up on panel, let me know. Email me. If some of you know me from Discord I'm in, let me know in there. I don't want to be up here being a talking head. I want other people to come in here. I want other people to be able to speak their minds and their hearts. I'm going to close with this thought, okay? I may not close with any music at all. The only music is going to be just this little sound of me reverberating. But one of the problems I have, and I have noticed, and I've been also struggling with it myself, is that we lack courage to do the right thing. Now, what I'm going to suggest is a lot of people, they group up, like, right? You want to fit in where you're going to do something to fit in, right? And that's a compromise. You need courage to continue to be who you truly are. Don't lower your standards. I think a lot of times what friendship is people have to be able to say, the best thing I can do for you, if I am actually your friend, is I'm going to challenge you to be the best person you can be. If I see you falling short of that, or if you see me falling short of that, then say to me, hey, Stellar, I noticed this, and here's what it is. Now, be clear about what it is, at least. Do that much. Say, this is what I've noticed you do, and I'm going to challenge you to be a better person. I'll say, thank you. Let me try to work on that. In other words, you don't help your friend. If you want to call him a friend, you don't help him by rubber stamping bad behavior. The best thing we can do for a friend, a true friend, is this. Bring out the best in that friend. Bring out the best. And that might mean saying, if your friend says, hey, I'm going to do this, or you notice some behavior you don't like, say to your friend, you're better than that. You're better than that. You can do better than that. And because I care about you and love you, I'm going to challenge you to be better than that. Now, that might ruffle some feathers, but because if you don't do that, you go along with their bad behavior, it just makes matters worse. You're not helping your friend by letting him slide by, okay? So challenge things that don't look right, that don't sound right. A true friend is going to do that. I like the statement, don't pick a side. Oh, I'm on this side. Oh, no, you are. I'm on this other side. These are my people. I'm on that side or this side. I say, don't pick a side at all. Don't take a side with anybody. Take a stand. Don't take a side. Take a stand for what is truthful, as best you understand it. Take a side for what is true, as best you know it. That's all I'm saying. You're not trying to make problems, but you want to do the right thing. There's 3 types of people in this world. One of the people that, if I remember it now, I should have thought of it before I said it. Class of people is people who always make a mess of everything, right? They come in and they make a mess. And there's other people who make a joke of everything, right? The pranksters. And then the third person is the people who try to make sense of everything. And that's where we ought to be. We have to understand what's going on. Don't leap before you look. Don't speak before you give pause for the cause to see what is going on. And be very careful. Measure your words carefully. I guess I'm going into it. I don't want to go into it. I'll wait until July 1st, and we'll have our live stream addressing the issue of bullying, which I think, and think you would agree, is getting worse on social media. Okay? Yeah, that's a good question, Phoenix. I tell you, I got a lot to say on that. Shakespeare was a guy, and he put a good spin on drama, didn't he? All the Shakespearean plays. It's all about drama, and human life is all about drama. Jesus was all about drama. I remember having some people say to me, Joe, Jesus wouldn't show up on YouTube. He wouldn't show up in the drama community or in Boyd or any of these places. And I said to them, au contraire, this is the first place he'd go. Jesus did not shy away from drama. Jesus was all about fixing bad drama. The drama of a young boy who left home and embarrassed his family, the prodigal son. He was all about people who won't help other people. The story of the Good Samaritan. And those are the two most famous stories in the New Testament. Jesus was all about drama. And so he addressed the drama is human behavior. Drama is all the things that happen in our lifetime. It's all dramatic. Now, there's good drama and there's bad drama, no doubt. But Phoenix, I appreciate very much your question. I really do. I don't think it's all bullying. I think that sometimes we see a good end to drama. There's a lot of drama going on right now in the political world stage, right? What's going to happen between Israel and Iran and us? What's going to happen in the Gaza Strip? And 2 million people who are unable to return to their homes. All this drama. Drama would, to me, simply mean, you can look it up, but the interactions that we have that are not just emotional, but real life. And we can't escape drama, nor should we try. We have to put a spin on it that brings humanity. And so when drama includes humanity, it will have a much better ending than when we simply try to destroy our enemies. Sorry, long answer. Yeah, pebbles. Drama could be considered varying opinions, not bullying. Yeah. I think it's just good to be able to realize that life is all about drama. Our whole lives have been filled with drama. The near-death experience people that come back, the University of Virginia talks about this. They've done thousands of case studies. They say that people get a life review. At the end of their life, it's a spin of everything that happened to them, especially those high points and low points. It's all dramatic. Yeah. Love is drama. When you fall in love, there's nothing more dramatic and wonderful. But that's good drama, right? Phoenix says, true, but Stellar is going to address bullying. There's a slippery slope in this place because much of it is disrespectful. Yeah, well, no disagreement with me from that. I agree. We want to be able to, I think the thing of it is life is drama. Life is all about drama. But good drama is how we want to spend life. People will, look, in my years in ministry, I'll give you an example. Somebody I helped prepare for First Holy Communion later came down with Ewing sarcoma, ended up struggling for his life. An 8-year-old boy named Timmy. He unfortunately died of Ewing sarcoma. There are others who live from it. It's drama. Life happens. And it can be very emotional. Drama is not just emotion. Drama are life events that happen to us. But bullying would be a type of drama that is oppressive and negative, and we ought to name it for as such, and we ought to address it and we have to offer an alternative, or people just go on and say, well, this is all we know. No, there's more. There's more. Martin Luther King gave an alternative to violent drama, violence of the word, the fist, and the tongue. People who plot evil, violence of the tongue, words, the fist, physical, and the heart, people who plan evil deeds. And that's very, very horrible, negative drama. But there are alternatives, and Martin Luther King Jr. gave us, as did Jesus, other options for that. Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. That's what we want to address is if we lack human respect, we have failed, and we can't go any further with that. We have to respect people, but we have to challenge them, and we can't do it arbitrarily and say, well, I'll challenge my friend's enemies. I'll go after them, but I won't go after my friend. I'm not asking you to go after your friend, but what I would do is say I paid a high price for that. I went after somebody. I won't mention his name. It would be indiscreet, but I went after somebody who was, I thought, a friend, and that person never understood what I was trying to do, and for the next 3 or 4 years attacked me mercilessly. So yeah, it can blow up in your face, but I would not change what I did because I was trying to help him. He was actually going after 2 transgendered people, being transphobic, and I was challenging him in the best way I thought I could, and he didn't like it. Yes, that is the potentiality is that someone will either misunderstand you or think you should have been loyal to them. Look, I'm not going to bury the bodies. I'm not going to, ride loyal with anybody till the wheels fall off, like people say. That's not mature. That's what kids do. No, we have to be better. We have to grow up. We have to realize that even our best friends are human and they make mistakes and they need to be challenged, and we need to let them challenge us back. That's what adults do. And then we become a better person. Then we become a better society. Yeah, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I think that never forfeit your right to chat. You have every right to speak your mind and heart. All you have to do today, that's another point I want to make, is just go into a chat room, unbeknownst to you, where somebody you know doesn't like somebody in there, and they come back and give you hell. And you go, wait a minute, what did I do? You're over there supporting them. And you say, well, supporting who? I just saw somebody I know isn't saying hello. You shouldn't be in there. Those are people that, and they tell you their whole story then, of why they have a problem with so-and-so. But you get a blistering retort from them because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time through no fault of your own. And that is a huge problem as well. Should we, of course, we would say, have the right to go where we want to go. But when you choose to do that, believe me, people are watching, and they're going to test you and see why you're there, and maybe condemn you because you were there. That's another form of bullying as well. So anyway, all I'm saying is, on July 1st, I'm going to do a bullying live stream. And I hope that if any of you have any suggestions, I have a public email. It's verbumsapiensi0@gmail.com. It's in my About page. I'll type it in here. I hate typing it because it's so doggone long. Okay, that's my public email. And if you have any thoughts of what you want included in the July 1st bullying live stream addressing bullying, please include it. If you want to be up on panel, let me know. If you have any concerns, please share them. And this will become our effort, not just my effort. That's what I would like. Okay, so now that I got off of the biblical scholarship and got on to the bullying topic, people are coming in. I don't want to be judgmental, but people love gossip. I'm not big into gossip, but people look, we love what's going on. Humans are that way. They've talked about, scientists have talked about evolution, human beings. We would not have evolved and survived as human beings if we didn't actually gossip, because gossip is a way of staying in touch. We had to communicate, and even to survive, watch out for this one, watch out for that one. And so, but then it can become very distorted, can it not? Let's see. I think it is bullying to tell people whose chat room they can't get. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think as well. I agree with you. Phoenix says, "Don't name it. Bullying live stream might be misunderstood." Yeah. Well, look, and I might have came down on you hard there. I apologize. I've had so many trolls come in here more recently, and I'm kind of a little bit watching for that again. But anyway, I think one of the biggest problems we have has to do with being misunderstood. Being misunderstood, like, happens all the time. And then we can get into a debate and an argument about something that really we probably agree about, but we misunderstood each other and we needed to be better listeners. So certainly communication. Hi, Cass. Welcome to you. Communication is one of the first steps toward what I would consider public conflict resolution. Cass says, I definitely had that experience before. I literally said hi in the chat. As a creator, a minute mod flipped the heck out of across several Discord yelling at me. Yeah, that's what goes on. Yeah. I don't know. It is what it is, but what do we do about it is the real challenge. People might not expect you to challenge them to be a better person, but what I'm saying to you is if we don't do that, we don't become a better person, and we don't become a better community, and we probably won't solve our problems. Oh God, there's so much I'm champing or chomping at the bit to say stuff, and I'm holding back, okay? I'm holding back. Lady Scrapper says, some people think an opinion of something is bullying. Yeah. Well, if you hold a disparate view from someone else's, they might feel that way, yeah. When in fact, it's just you're entitled to your view. Evelyn says, demonizing and lying about vulnerable people to make them a scapegoat is bullying. Yeah, I would say so as well. It's one thing to point things out, but we have to point it out in a way that is nonviolent. Yeah, we could point out someone else's bad behavior, but do we want to rip them a new one while we do it? That is a clear and present danger. It happens. I see that happening all the time. Oh my God, there's so much to say about that. Let's see. Well, we're human beings and we're not perfect. And Phoenix, I think that when we begin with humility, that's the first step on the ladder of all the virtues is humility. When we can take the step of humility, we can get somewhere. If we can't and are arrogant and triumphant and we believe we can't be wrong, or maybe a little narcissistic as well thrown in there, well, we're not going to resolve anything with anyone else until they come around to our way of thinking, and we want them to echo exactly word for word. Well, that's not going to happen. So if we just want to, and some people maybe just enjoy fighting. I'm convinced there are people who just, they want that. What was that movie? Was it the Batman movie? Some people just like to see the world burn. And I suppose that's what we're seeing as well. But that doesn't mean we cannot challenge that. Laura says, I have an opinion of people, but I don't dox them. I don't dig into people's personal life. I don't post pictures of their family, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, if we could at least have a line that we don't cross. In prison they say children, don't mess with children. And we know what happens to people who have done that and end up in prison. They may not ever see the light of day. They may not live long. I'm not sure we even have a line anymore. Prison has a line. Do we have a moral line? People seem to be crossing, Laura, what you're talking about, that line seems to be blurred nowadays, doesn't it? Yeah, I know holding back isn't my strong point. But anyway, I don't know. You're getting tired of listening to me because I'm getting tired of listening to me. I was going to go back out. I've been painting my house, and it's a big project. The house is a little too big for me, but um, it's really a tall house in the back, really tall. So I have to get on this 28-foot ladder. And I know a lot of the local squirrel community. So I become friends with them. I feed them. And the squirrels say, Joe, let us know when you're up on the ladder. And the squirrels all gather under the ladder. In case I fall, they catch me. They give me a soft landing. Because, I mean, God only knows anything can happen. But anyway, unlikely. But so that's been my project. And I've been doing a lot of domestic improvement here, especially the back deck. Everything's big, and it's like Texas back there. Everything's way too big, and it's a major undertaking. Angela says, true, but there are couples that get off on fighting, and ain't that the truth? That surely is. You know, Angela, if they didn't like your peaches and blueberry dump cake recipe, maybe even if they did like it, they'd probably look for something they could say, well, you know, she talked about, you know, you don't have to put in, you can put in a cake box recipe in that with vanilla pudding, but you don't need to put that vanilla pudding in there, and she puts in too much butter. Well, they probably never even tried it. See, I did listen to that video. It's great. But there are people who are just, I don't know, they got up on the wrong side of life, and they've never been able to fix that. And I don't know, it's sad. But yes, we have to challenge people, that's for sure. And Evelyn says, loss of civility, increase in cruelty. Yeah, absolutely. When you see a leader of the country as a bully, I'm not sure, that we can expect anything, but things are getting worse. Yes, if our leaders, and that includes our Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, if he were a violent person, it would be very difficult to remain nonviolent. We have to have moral ascendancy and authenticity among our leaders, do we not? We have to have that. And I think that's the point. When we find a decline, Congress is a mess. Congress is a shambles. Did I tell you Congress is it's horrible? You know, what we need now is to raise up a group of kindergartners and elementary school age kids. We need to start teaching some type of ethical behavior so that it stays with them the rest of their life, because I've never seen so many sycophants and people willing to sell their soul to the devil for, you know, these people have been elected because of corporate gifts, and it's awful. This is a mess we're in. So we are, in a way, only as good as our society will be, as good as our government is. So our people have to change that. We need to send people, we need to change certain things like, what's that thing Bernie Sanders is always talking about, Evelyn? What is it called? It's basically where if you have enough money, there's no limit to the amount of money that you can give to try to bring information about your candidate so that your candidate will be successful. And money does talk. Money will influence the outcome of an election. So we need to, it's on tip of my tongue, I can't think of the name of that, which I would love to see that reversed in this country so that money is not such an influence. We need people who are not going to sell out. We need people who are going to stand strong morally, right? Moral leaders, isn't that what we would want? Pebble says if leaders aren't standing up for the people, we're doomed. And that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah. So, you know, it has to do with, I would say, ethical beliefs and and the same thing with this thing coming up on July 1st with having to do with bullying and what we can do about it. I think that we have to recognize that, you know, when people bully other people, it's because we have been bullied ourselves. You know, people learn what they live what they learn. They give off what they've experienced. And I'm fond of talking about if we go to war with someone, we will not do that. We will not go to war with someone unless we have a war going on inside of ourselves first. We are at war inside ourselves with us. We may not like ourselves as much as we should. And look, I can say that's true for me. Yeah, Congress should be ashamed. It really is. It really is. I think that there's going to be a reckoning. We have to be patient. I was going to mention about humility, but yeah, there's no humility in Congress, that's for sure. It's just like a bunch of kindergartners that never grew up. They got taller and heavier, but they never emotionally grew up. That's what I'm looking at in Congress now. It's such an embarrassment. You look around the world and other people are looking at America going, what happened to that country? Even our neighbor to the north, Canada, I'm so proud of Canada, has stood up and said, no, we're not going to be oppressed and bullied. we're not going to be bullied by anybody. And if it means they're going to have to endure a little something financially, well, they're willing to pay that price. But that's what integrity does, is it not? That's what integrity is called for. We make sacrifices when necessary. The one thing we can't afford to do is sacrifice those beliefs that we've held near and dear, and especially those found within our Constitution and 27 amendments to it. We cannot let go of those. The political donations, that's what it is. There's a term for that with a law that was passed that removed the cap. I can't remember the name of it. If someone said it, I would say, yep, that's it. But the cap on political donations, that's exactly right. That simply says, if you have enough money, you can get your guy or your gal in office, and that doesn't mean they're going to work for you. They're going to work for the people that paid your way in, right? That bought you that office. And then we have, that's another form of political prostitution, is it not? I talked about prostitution in the temple as well today in the topic I covered. Let's see, Evelyn says the administration have bullied and are still bullying the federal workforce. Yeah, just so many things. Oh my God, we could spin off into. I've got a zillion videos I want to make having to do with the current state of things as we see them today. Even if we just took account of what we see has happened, what's transpired, it has been rapid fire. It's almost as if the intention was to overwhelm the American public with so much change that we'll sort of like get so flustered and give up and turn away or get distracted by some other, like who uses what bathroom. Let's see. Evelyn said, insulting them. Oh, what Pebble said, people stood back, did nothing, allowed the Holocaust to happen. Remember that. Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I think that, we're deporting, I used it the other day with someone, I can't remember who I said it to, but we're deporting our values. We're deporting and sending to prison things that we've held near and dear. And human beings are the most important assets and resources that any community has. And we're tossing them away as if they don't matter. Evelyn says, insulting them, accusing them of not existing, humiliating them by requiring them to send in lists of things that they got done. Yeah, this big, beautiful, ugly bill is going to be a real wake-up call for a lot of people, especially in states that we traditionally call red states, states that do not have the income that California has and New York has. And they're going to be suffering. I'm worried about hospitals and local clinics that are going to be closing. We're warned about that. There's so many things that are going to be happening if this bill passes, and I'm afraid it may. But we have the midterms to look forward to, and we can voice our discontent there. Never, ever fall into despair. Try to realize our country came through, the Civil War, a period of time of really holding women back, and suffrage overcame that, and people of color, and the movements that overcame racism, Our nation added amendments to the Constitution. Don't ever doubt that your nation will come back from what we're experiencing today. Please don't, because we will come back from this, and we'll learn from it, and we'll be stronger because of it. Oh, what a price to pay, but we will survive this. I believe that with all my heart. Sorry, I'm missing some of your comments. Yeah, we're a nation, Evelyn, of immigrants, and we're throwing immigrants away. You know, as they say, the mark of a noble and virtuous nation is how we treat the poor among us. Like Hubert Humphrey said, how we treat the people at the beginning of life, you know, our young children, at the twilight of life, the elderly, and those in the challenges of life, the disabled. And look how we're removing potentially now healthcare benefits, you know, SNAP assistance, and on and on. Insurance, it's just frightening. Yeah. Yeah, it's right, Pebbles. Any of us could end up, you know, it's interesting because some of the criteria almost actually, with how the Trump family arrived in America, would place them in that situation of potential deportation. Not that that's going to happen, but that actually puts the Trump family, because of how they arrived in this country, in that same category. Ironic, isn't it? Angela, I believe you will. I really do. I believe that we all will, hopefully. Welcome, Scott Black. Good to see you. I should say Jeff. Everyone calls you Jeff. I'm not going to probably be on too much longer. I just wanted to share that on July 1st, once again, July 1st, I want to do a live stream having to do with the problems that have touched social media far and wide. Not just here on YouTube, but and so we're going to talk about bullying, abusing social media context. You know, we have measured protections, but they're pretty much they're not helping. YouTube, for example, where we are, has community guidelines, but people aren't following them. And then if you report them, YouTube's not doing anything about them. So, you know, it's a law with no bite. We're not seeing any, so report all you want. The only time that I have seen a response from YouTube is when copyright is involved. Now, there may be a few exceptions to that. I'm sure there is, having to do with some of the protected classes. But a lot of that, you know, YouTube has 1.5 billion people that use it. 1.5 billion. And do you think they have 500,000, which would be a drop in the bucket, employees that are listening to the concerns of people like you and I that go on, these problems go on every single day? No. They've got AI doing that. There's no way they could afford, much less employ several million people to really adequately cover the concerns that are happening day in, day out. So AI is just looking for certain things, and mainly it's copyright, I would say, and certain keywords, which you know what I'm talking about. But most of our concerns, and bullying, so we have to manage this ourselves. This falls upon our shoulders. I don't think there's any escaping that. We have to manage it. If we're not going to manage it, then this is the wild, wild west. And by manage it, I mean like what maybe we'll start to do on July 1st. First of all, we'll talk about it. We'll address the problem. We'll try to measure out what we see going wrong, and maybe most importantly, what alternatives we have to correct it, because YouTube is not going to fix this, in my opinion. If it affected the income for YouTube, and YouTube is not terribly profitable. Its parent company, Google, is, but YouTube is kind of a break-even sort of thing. The last time I looked at it. But anyway, so they're not interested in spending money on making your life better. Most people, like the police will tell you, and you know, a court of law, an attorney will say, just get off YouTube if you don't like it. Well, we're caught because we like YouTube, but we don't like what's happening. So anyway, that's about all I can say. Let's see, I'm just reading your comments. Yeah, somebody mentioned Evelyn and the gays. I think it's really important when we see someone being oppressed. I would certainly want to echo this again on Tuesday, July 1st, where we see someone being gone after. What's preventing us from saying, wait, stop, do you realize what you're doing? You may be causing harm to that person. And do it in as polite a way as you can, respectful way. But keep at it. You got to get their attention. Some people, you have to use the 2x4. That's what some people say about me. Or with most guys, you got to use the 2x4 to get our attention. But we do need to do that. We need to protect the innocent. We need to protect the vulnerable and their classes of people, particularly that, the early part of life, young people and the elderly as well need to be protected. The vulnerable people, the disabled, people who are struggling in many ways. And then all of the classifications of people who would fit within the minority status, whether that's gender or sexuality, race, religion, and on it goes. We need to be very protective. If we fail to speak up, I've often heard there's two things you can have on your hands, right? You can have water on your hands and you have blood on your hands. You don't want any of those on your hands because you failed to speak up. If someone's hurting someone, you see blood on the ground or on someone's face, then you speak up. It's easy to identify the culprit or the problem, and it's violence of the tongue, of word, of fist, or of the heart, violence of the heart. But if you fail to do anything, you have water on your hands, right? You have water, like Pontius Pilate, called for a basin of water, saying, hey, his death is not upon me, his death is on you. Well, if we fail, that doesn't work, by the way. If we fail to speak out in a time when we could have, then we have committed, they call it the sin of omission. We omitted, we failed to do what was right in the midst of something that going on that was wrong. So we really do have to speak out for those who, and what a wonderful thing. Once in a blue moon, someone spoke up on my behalf, and I'm like, thank you. I really appreciate that. But we have to defend each other with justice and charity as well. We don't want to go out and just rip somebody from limb to limb. Completely the wrong way to go about it, because that's what we're generally angry about and hurt about and offended in the first place. Someone has done that perhaps to us or a friend of ours. So we have to learn a new way. And, when we learn a new way, we find something remarkable. And what we find out that it is completely and utterly disarming to show someone compassion. It really is. It's like, well, I can't even go back at you because you're being so doggone nice. Yeah, kill them with kindness. There is a way to do that. I'm not saying it works in every case, but it's very important for us to learn conflict resolution, peaceful procedures, and other ways of going about resolving our problems in a way that's more dignified. And it has a much better outcome. Okay, so everyone says, so if people sit silent, they need to remember the poem about being silent. Yes, they do. Every group that's silent until you see the one. Yeah, that was Reverend Lutheran Niemöller, who told that story. They came for the trade unionists, they came for the Jews, they came for the gypsies, and then they came for me, and there's no one left to speak for me. Yeah, we have to speak out. Every group is targeted at some point. Thank you, Evelyn. Angela says, and then they came for there you go, right there, because I'm not a Jew. They came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Yeah, that's a beautiful saying. I don't know if he was hung. I know that, let's see, who was Bonhoeffer, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the Reverend, because he spoke out against the Nazis, and he was hung by the Nazis in 1945, I believe, in April. But you will sometimes pay a price for doing the right thing. Of course, that's what happened to our Lord, is it not? Yeah, Niemöller. Yeah, Evelyn, that could very well be. And, they're probably saying, well, Joe, just stop. We'll be back on July 1st. I don't know if they will or not, but there's so much for us to address without making it personal. I'm not saying let's come loaded to the gun to shoot our ammunition off and let's blame this person, let's blame that person. No, I won't have that. I won't be doing that. I won't permit that. I want a problem fixed and solved. I don't want problems made worse. So easy to make them worse. Let's just pin the blame on one person. Let's do that. No, that will make everything worse. That's just not going to be. We can't do it that way. The first place we begin when we address the problems we have is within ourself. We look at ourselves. That's the first place. And that's what we should do. Working on my patience, to me, it feels so selfish. Well, I don't think it is. I think it's time well spent. Patience, yeah. Love is patient, love is kind. It's St. Paul defined love with that word, Evelyn, so you're in good company there. It's one of the virtues that, in fact, is how they define God. God is patient because God is love. Love is patient, love is kind, long-suffering, and so on. Anyone who can see what is happening to the migrants and not feel compelled to stop it, to me, I just don't know that there's hope for that person. Well, hope disappears when we no longer see hope. I think we have to see hope and keep that hope alive, like some people have famously said over and over. Keep hope alive. And that means don't be discouraged, don't give up. Some people have fought for women's suffrage, have fought for their rights, for women's rights, for decades. We're just seeing an oppressive situation now like we've never seen before in the last 150 days. People of color have been struggling for, and still are, and LGBT people still are, fighting for a basic human dignity and rights and acceptance. Yeah. So, yeah, we do have to be patient. We really do. That takes, I know that you know. But it's something that we can all continue to aspire to and challenge ourselves. And we can look for the small victories which happen. And that will help us from becoming discouraged. There's a lot of good things that are going on all the time. News, unfortunately, has always played off of the negative because they think it'll get more. Look, the drama on YouTube does the same thing, right? Let's talk about one individual. Let's name them. Let's talk about all the things we don't like about them. And you know what? This place would fill up fast. And that's what gets people to watch whatever news it is. Whether it's Fox or CNN, it doesn't matter which one. They look for that which is sensational because people like sensational. Well, people need to learn to like what is maybe even more sensational. And I would say that we have within us the wherewithal, by the power of God, some fantastic available help. Some call it sanctifying grace. Some call it the presence of the Holy Spirit. I don't care what we call it. But the reality is, Abraham Lincoln called it the angel of our better nature. We have that within us, but we cannot let it remain silent. We have to listen to it. So that's where we become better people. We begin to not just listen to your favorite news station. You begin listening to that spirit of our better nature. And people are speaking. And yeah, maybe you're saying, oh, gee, I can't do it. It's so boring. Well, maybe boring isn't that bad at times. And we need to learn a new way. What really some call boring is simply what children call, it's not fun. And you want to have something more fun. Well, at some point, we have to do the hard work of being an adult. And that's what this is about. Angela says they've had a heart attack to look the other way at what's being done to basic rights. Yeah, it's very difficult to look at that. And I get angry, too. I really do. I think, well, gee, I have a Glock. I have a Glock 17. No, I'm not going to turn violent. But I'm not going to pretend and tell you that I don't have a barometer inside me that registered anger. Sure, I do. You know, at some point, people decided to turn against King George of England, and we threw the tea in the harbor, and we said we're not going to put up with this anymore. I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I would hope and prefer that it's nonviolent. We saw about what happened on January 6th that was violent. It's not a good way to reconcile. Didn't turn out well, and it almost never does. Evelyn says, Angela, so many of the people who have been deported have been in the U.S. for decades. Sometimes, yeah, that really is true. Saw one in the news recently, a man who had been here for, 40 years. His son was or did he have three sons? At least one, maybe three, that were United States Marines. And they just deported him. Yeah, amazing. Amazing. That really is immoral. I'm fighting off a sneeze, which I just did. I apologize. I usually get to the audio in time to silence that, but sorry. Angela says, or Evelyn says, Stephen Miller, that heartless psychopath. Yeah, Stephen Miller, and he's Jewish. He's Jewish, and everyone says he's your friendly 21st century fascist. I don't understand how people go down the wrong path. I really don't. Yeah, he's from a Jewish family. Just makes no sense sometimes. If we could look into a crystal ball, we'd go, oh, I see, here it went wrong, and there it went wrong, and he ends up where he's at today. I guess a lot of his high school buddies have talked about, how he was a bit of an oppressive guy, even as a teenager. Angela says, may God forgive me, I have no sympathy for Hispanic triple thumpers being deported. Yeah, none. Well, boy, all you have to have today is a Hispanic-sounding name. I'm surprised they haven't arrested some Major League Baseball players yet. And I hate to say that may happen, but it wouldn't surprise me if it does. And then they'll have egg on their face and go, oh my God, you just took our starting pitcher from the Seattle Mariners or from the Texas Rangers that they played today, or whoever your team is, simply because of their name. Oh, thank you, Dolly. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll let my sneeze be heard if people are going to send me a blessing. I appreciate that. I shouldn't keep going because eventually maybe I'll start getting to share about bullying, and I hope you do too. And like I said, I put my public email out there, and you can find it in my About page. If you have some thoughts, I don't care who you are, I welcome them. Just be nice to me. Be polite. I'll be polite back, And when we don't understand each other and I make a mistake, I apologize. But send me your thoughts, your questions, your concerns. Let me know that as well, and email me that. Or those of you who are in the Discord that I'm in, you can share it with me there if you like. But hopefully this will be meaningful. If we get back on a path that, people often complain, we have no content. Listen to a YouTube video about how to fix my plumbing. I go, dang, that meant a lot. I saved myself $150. I got a guy on YouTube that showed me how to fix my furnace. And by golly, I went in there and I got it fixed and it worked beautiful. It's worked for over a year now. I didn't have to pay a penny. So that's drama, my furnace drama, and it ended well. So drama can be good, or it can be ugly. And we want to be able to find ways to make the drama of living as a human being good drama. And there are ways to do that. So that's what we want to address. Buffering? Yeah. I've been getting that notice. YouTube's not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. That could be I've had some problems yesterday with my YouTube provider, which is Xfinity. I pay for 1.2 download, and it just doesn't, I don't know. The upload's what really counts when you do these streams, so I have to take a look at that. July 1st, so I don't know. I wish I had a song to go out with. Do I have anything lined up? I really apologize for the first part of that stream. It really went bad. And I'm not sure because what I did was I took off all the music. It all was playing at the same time. What an awful experience for that to have happened. I don't know what button I pushed, but anyway, I'll just wish you well. Thank you all for being here.